The views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are our own, or those of our guests, and in no way represent the views of the companies, associations, or organizations that any of us may work for or represent. All stories, events, and tales shared within this episode may or may not have happened in the manner in which they were told. They may or may not have even happened at all. The details have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. This is Squawk Ident. You're listening to Squawk Ident, an aviation podcast that explores the many pathways to an aviation profession, the challenges that a professional aviator can expect in today's marketplace, and we share many stories along the way. I'm your host, Aviator Tony, a professional airline pilot currently flying for a U.S. legacy airline with close to 20 years on the flight line. Welcome aboard Flight 113 of the Squawk Ident podcast, recorded on the 6th of July, 2022. From the Aviator Sound Studios from somewhere in Southern California. On today's flight, Rob and Alex join me as we discuss recurrent flight training events that Aviator Tony recently went through at Legacy Airlines, some of the new scenarios he experienced in the simulator, and how to settle the nerves most pilots experience leading up to and during training and checking events. We also revisit one of our favorite outlaws. That's right, Jetpack Man is back. Did you fly this holiday weekend? We explore some of the holiday travel issues and what airline pilots are dealing with as news of pilot shortages, pilot contract offers, and mismanagement issues are flooding the headlines. Sully steps down as ICAO ambassador, and what happens when an engine manufacturer finds imperfections in their latest engine designs? We'll find out. We also revisit aviation security and a recent video that has gone viral showing a Jordanian aviation charter airline incident with a security guard. So stay with us as we run our final checks and prepare to push off the gate. Flight 113 of the Squawk Ident podcast is officially underway.
How soon can you land? I can't tell. You can tell me I'm a doctor. No, I'm just not sure.
Joining us today is a superb aviator and Squawk Ident co-host. He is a former international professional racquetball champion, a member of the 9G Club, an AMP, an avionics tech, an RC aircraft commander, a boat skipper, a commercial drone operator, and currently an Airbus pilot for Legacy Airlines. The name we use here on the show is an alias to our employer, a U.S. mainline carrier. Fresh from his daughter's national volleyball championship tournament in Indianapolis, Indiana. Help us in welcoming back to the show our very own Mr. Rob D. Rob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's good to be back. It's been a whirlwind of travel and volleyball and just all kinds of busy stuff going on with the summer.
Yeah.
So it's good to sit down and chat it all out with you guys.
Yeah, and in the pre-show, it's been about 3 weeks since we recorded the last podcast. It's been very hectic schedule-wise. I know I had some training. I had planned on doing an update right after that training event was finished, but I kind of rolled right into more flying, and we had some events that happened with our schedules and with the industry at large. We've all kind of seen those headlines in the paper and online and everything. So that's been a little bit interesting. A lot of phone calls going back and forth. A lot of us have been talking about these contracts that have been offered and then pulled and offered and pulled, and it's a big mess. Hope we're not going to dive too much into that today, but we are going to scratch the surface on what it means to us as pilots. Rob, in the pre-show, you were saying that you didn't really fly much. You've had so much going on with the holiday and your daughter's volleyball tournament. What flying have you been able to acquire?
Well, in the previous podcast, we talked about my fishing trip that I just came off of, and in order to do that fishing trip, I had to back up a whole bunch of flying at the end of the month just to make that schedule work. So I did do a lot of flying right up to the end of June. I flew about, I think 2.5 weeks straight with maybe one, just basically the FAR legality of 168. What is it? 168 hours and a 30-hour break in between all that. So I did fly a bunch of trips, and one trip was memorable. I flew with a captain that I had flown with earlier in the year, and so we had a good trip and had a good, a really good relationship going. And we worked this one trip and it was just hilarious to us because uh, we had basically 8 legs scheduled in like a 3 day or a 4 day period of 8 legs. Only one of the 8 legs was on time, and the other ones were just crazy off schedule stuff. Um, so, and it was nothing to had nothing to do with weather or anything. It was all like mechanical. APUs were broken.
Yeah.
Um, something going wrong with or late inbound. And it was just, we kind of looked at each other and just rolled our eyes. I'm like, man, this is horrible.
Yeah.
It's like even on a perfect day, it's hard to put together a perfect schedule. So anyway, did a lot of flying, spent a lot of time in New Orleans. For some reason, the only trips that I can trade into to make all that stuff work had a lot of New Orleans overnight. So um, got to capitalize on some Cajun food and some seafood.
Nice.
Ate a lot of crawfish.
Yeah.
Went down to the French Quarter and what is it, Cafe Du Monde? Got
Oh
some
yeah. Some beignets.
beignets
Oh
and
yeah.
coffee. So
It's a heart attack
uh,
in a bag.
yeah, yeah, and then of course in the morning too when we went to work, I've got a bag of beignets at the airport, and
Yeah.
you can see all the crew members that had beignets because their uniforms are all powdered in white
A
that
white
white powdered
substance of some
sugar.
kind.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's like when in Rome, you gotta do it. So
Yeah.
it was good. That was a
Yeah.
good trip. So
Oh,
yeah,
good. I'm glad you got some time there. The French Quarter
yeah,
is quite beautiful, not just for the food, but for the architecture, the history, the jazz music.
yeah.
Did you find any
It was.
live music restaurants when you there?
Well, we didn't. I think a lot of that stuff happens in the evening time.
Mm,
Yeah, I'm sure they have some select places during the daytime. And the way our schedule worked, we were only able to go out like for lunch and stuff like that.
oh,
So we kind of missed like probably the happy hour of New Orleans,
yeah,
and so. But hey, it wasn't that bad. I kind of like to avoid that kind of stuff anyway. But
right, right.
I think it would be kind of cool just to experience it once. But I'm not really a big not advocate, but I don't like to really go out and seek that kind of stuff because I don't like
Yeah.
crowds and I like staying up late. I guess I'm getting really old. So
I gotta get to sleep at 6 p.m.
yeah, I
I'm
do.
tired.
Yeah, yeah, I need. So yeah, yeah, fly late and yeah, got to sleep in and
Yeah,
get up early and do all that stuff. So
yeah.
anyway,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
all
glad you had a
good.
good time and you got to fly with a familiar face, which is always so very comforting.
Yeah,
It's like flying
yeah,
with a friend. You 90% of the time
exactly.
you're flying with someone you've never flown with before. When you have
Right,
15,000 plus pilots in your company, odds are you'll fly with someone and you might not fly with them again for years. Um,
right. Yeah.
and which is funny because I had in my simulator event, I looked at my sim partner, a captain,
Hmm.
LA based Airbus captain, and I looked at him and I went, "We've flown together before." And he goes, "No, I don't think so. I remember you." I went, nah, I don't forget a face. Your name I don't recognize, but your face,
Right.
we've flown together before. He goes,
Uh-huh.
nah, I don't think so. And then like an
Oh
hour
man.
into it, it was bothering him that I said that. And he looked in
Yeah.
his lightsaber app and he goes, we flew together once in or in 2000 and in
Oh.
19. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He goes, hey, yeah,
Oh,
we did
that's
a
funny.
DCA, da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, that's cool that,
Mhm.
the app will tell you the history of the people you've
Yeah.
flown with. So yeah, we had a
Yeah.
good time,
We
but you know,
yeah. Yeah. And you just triggered a memorable moment on that trip actually going into New Orleans. We were late. We were late arriving. I mean, it was I don't know what caused the delay, but we were late probably by like an hour. And they had signed us a gate. And so we landed, checked in with ops, said, "Hey, we're on the ground for gate."
mhm,
I'm just spitting out a gate there. B14.
sure.
They're like, "All right, yeah, gate is occupied. Go ahead and go to the pad area, and we'll call you when the gate opens up." So, all right, so we, go to the pad area, and then we hear, plane call for push off of B14, and so we're like, "Okay, cool. We'll head over that way as soon as you call us." So, meanwhile, there was an RJ contract carrier
Mhm.
175 also waiting to park.
Mm.
So you might be able to figure out where this is going. So our gate pushes, they call us, they said, all right, come on over. So we get out and we start taxiing over there. And next thing you know, that RJ pulls into that gate.
Wait, with or without permission?
They were getting marshaled in and everything.
Oh boy.
So we as we're approaching, we're like, hey, what gate did you ask us to pull into? They're like, B14. We're like, well, there's another airplane parking there. They're like, yeah, it should be 2576. I'm like, okay, well, I am 2576, and we are not at B14. There's an RJ 175 parking in B14. They're like, well, they should not be there. You should park there. I'm like, well, it's hard to park there when there's another airplane there. So they're B14. I said, B14 is available. Would you like us to park there? They're like, no, we need you to park on B6, 16 or whatever.
Sure.
I forgot. I got it all jumbled up there, but
Next door.
they're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And they're like, well, we want you there. I'm like, well, okay, we're not going there because there's another airplane there. I was like, I'll tell you what, the guys are marshaling us into this gate. We're just going to park the airplane here. You guys can sort out the gate differences later. So we just pulled in. The lady's like, no, don't do it. And then I'm like, sorry.
Who's on first?
This is too crazy.
Yes, now, on the St. Louis team, we have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
That's what I want to find out. I want you to tell me the names of the fellas on the St. Louis team.
I'm telling you, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
Do you know the fellas' names?
Yes.
Well, then who's playing first?
Yes.
I mean the fellow's name on first base.
Who?
The fellow playing first base for St. Louis.
Who?
The guy on first base.
Who is on first?
Well, what are you asking me for?
I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, who is on first?
I'm asking you who's on first.
That's the man's name.
That's whose name?
Yes.
Well, go ahead and tell me.
Who?
The guy on first.
Who?
The first baseman.
Who is on first?
Have you got a first baseman on first?
Certainly.
Then who's playing first?
Absolutely.
So we just pulled in. Gate, jet bridge driver pulls up. They're like, where are you guys coming in from? We're like, Miami. They're like, okay, good. Close it, opened up the door. Nothing,
Yeah.
let everybody out.
It's not a big
I
deal.
think
It's
we
just
kinda,
that now all the passengers that were waiting for, they have to do a gate swap and all that stuff,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's literally next door, so it
Sure.
wasn't like
two terminals
major-
over or something. Yeah.
but I'm sure all the bags that were going on that other flight ended up on Miami flight.
Right.
So that could have been an issue. But anyway, that was just that was one for the storybooks, and kind of shake your head sometimes. And it's amazing that with all the moving pieces in our operation that this is a hiccup that it really isn't a big deal in the big scheme of things.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how we can actually move people and bags and all over the world and just have these little hiccups and really not affect the bigger picture. So it really is
it's a complex operation, and it really does take a lot of moving parts, and a lot of people find it easy to complain and go, mismanagement and this and that. And there's truth to that. There's absolutely truth to that. But at the same time, you try doing it. It's really the protocols and logistics to operate an airline of this size with multiple carriers. It is not easy. So we gotta keep that in mind when we sit there and are quick to judge. But I want to move forward, and let's get our next host introduced here. Joining us today is another exceptional aviator and flight instructor. He is a U.S. Navy Reserve's Chief Information Systems Technician and a new hire first officer at Sandpiper Regional, the alias to one of our legacy airlines' wholly owned regional airlines. Joining us from the second floor of the La Quinta Inn Suites in Euless, Texas, where he's getting ready to demonstrate his superior simulator skills later today for his maneuvers validation event. Help us in welcoming back to the show, Mr. Alex Daigle. Alex, how the heck you doing?
Doing fantastic. It's been a minute. Did get to see you in Texas on your recurrent.
Oh, that's right. We have to put that audio on here on the show today.
Yeah, that was fun. We got to talk to my buddy Mike with you and kind of get a different perspective of how training's going. And that was, I want to say, right before we were starting our simulators.
Oh yeah.
So
you were getting ready, the next day, I think.
Yeah. So we were basically just hanging out, doing nothing to then the next day start our sims. And it's been 8 sim sessions later, and what are we, 2 weeks? I don't even know at this point.
2.5 weeks since then. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. That we've been going at it. Got through all 8 lessons.
Yeah.
And now I'm on to my maneuvers validation. So that comes here in what is it, 1:45. So next few hours I'll be going through my maneuvers validation.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to hear that you're prepared. You were telling me about your event yesterday. You had a little extra time in the simulator, and you basically went through the whole event. Before today's big, it's a checking event. It's not pass or fail. It's not a type ride, but it is definitely a stage check, right? You have to pass your maneuvers validation. You basically have to demonstrate everything you've learned to do your V1 cuts and your single engine approaches and your single engine landings and single engine go arounds. And then you have to do, all your different kind of maneuvers that they want to see you do, turns and stalls, whatever they want you to do. Every airline has a different program set up for their checking event for that particular aircraft. So, I'm glad to hear that you had that opportunity yesterday.
Yeah, no, it's that's the one thing that I like about at least I can speak from on Sandpiper's training department is sometimes the lessons that you're going through makes it seem like it's a 20-pound turd crammed into a 5-pound sack. It's the correct family way to put it.
Okay, man.
That was me putting it politely. But some of the lessons feel like that, and a couple of lessons just feel like, wow, that was 4 hours already. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, but yeah, that's one thing that I like is that they prepare you. They don't want you to fail, and that's with AQP now. It's gone are the days of look to your left, look to your right. One of you's failing. Now it's look to your left, look to your right. How are you guys going to help each other?
Yeah. Yeah, because that's how it happens on the line, right? That's what the TEM model, the threat and error management model, is all about. It's no longer about, don't help the guy next to you. Now it's about what would you do in real life? You would help each other out. You wouldn't just sit there and go, you're going to crash. You're going to crash. That would not happen. So the simulator events have incorporated that mentality that we're there to help each other out. Now, if you're dragging the dead body next to you through the sim event, okay, that's a different story. Okay, then it's like a little come to Jesus moment where the person that's being drugged through the event going, look, man, you're not prepared. What's happening? What can we do to make you prepared? Do you need an extra sim? Do you, what are you not getting? So it's a much friendlier environment nowadays. And I think that all has to do, and Rob, you could probably back me up on this. It has to do with the fact that they need us. They need you. It's not it's not picking teams for football. You're going, I pick Billy, and okay, I pick Johnny. He's a really good runner, and I pick Susie. Okay, and then the people that suck are like bench warmers or doing positions that okay, fine.
Yeah.
I guess I'll take Tim. That those days are over. Now it's like, come on, everyone, let's go.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's without making it sound wrong or bad, the way they're hiring now is a lot different than when they were hiring, after pre-pandemic, or I'm gonna say pre-pandemic, but right before, like a furlough or something like that, where they were a little more choosy on who they wanted, and now it's like if you can fill out an application, come on in. Some places are like, look, training starts on Monday. Just give me your application and we'll see you Monday. And they're letting the training department and the whole process work itself out rather than trying to interview the person and decide if they want to, if they fit part of the culture or anything like that. They just need bodies. They need people that are willing to step forward and do the job. And I got to tell you, it's going to be challenging for us, Tony, as we upgrade to captain, and we may have to help mold these new aviators at our company with the culture and everything like that. And I still think our culture needs to change a little bit for the better from what it has been previously. But anyway, big story is,
very
we
true.
need bodies to fill the seats.
Yeah, but I think it's more of a financial or a fiscal reaction. When their times are good for the company and they don't need to hire thousands of people every year because of the demand, then instead they can, like you said, they can pick and choose, and they're going to pick the people that they feel are the most qualified for the position, that are going to take the least amount of training, because training costs money. At the end of the day, it comes down to, is this pilot trainable? Will they get through under the minimum time that we're going to allow for the training to happen? If we have to spend more money, more time, more instructor pay, more simulator events, more ground school on another pilot, then they're not going to go with that pilot. But now that the hiring pool is just not big enough for the demand, then they were willing to spend the extra money. They're willing to give people a little bit more time in a simulator. So if you kind of are not getting a particular aspect because you don't have the experience behind you, that you've seen these things before, now the companies are willing to spend a little bit more money on your basically training. Whereas in the past, they wanted you completely trained already, and all you're doing is going through the motions so they can tick mark those boxes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yeah. And recently I was in my recurrent training. Now, this is not my first R12, as they call it. So when you're at an airline, you have to go back to what they call a schoolhouse to be trained periodically. Now, different airlines have different training programs. We were on was it a 9-month cycle before this, Rob?
Yeah, it had a R9 and R18,
on R18.
So a 9-month cycle.
Yeah, 9-month cycle. And some other airlines were 12 months. Some other airlines were 6 months training cycles. And what you're doing in training is, it's usually for recurrent training. You're not learning a new airplane. You're not in a new position. You're not upgrading to captain. You're just going back for your recurrent training event, or RTE, some people call it. When you're doing that, there's always 1 day of ground school. And then that 1 day of ground school, they talk about human factors, which is my favorite class, because that's where you see all the incidences and accidences and accidences. And you see all the things where people did something wrong, they messed up, and it was caused by human error. And not just pilots. We're talking about rampers and mechanics and, flight attendants, gate agents, everyone involved in the company. Any kind of incident or accident that happened, any fender bender that happened out on the ramp, is then kind of reviewed. And they always pick 1 or 2 major events that the airline has seen in the past 12 months, and they highlight that with videos and simulations. And so you can kind of understand what happened, what went wrong. And it's all about teaching us how to recognize the errors, that we're not trapped. And that's my favorite class. We also have a systems class where we review the systems that are on the docket for that cycle. And then we have another class that's usually crew security and crew, I forget what they call it, but it's usually conducted with flight attendants and pilots together, so that we can kind of dispel some of the erroneous ideas of what each department does. And it's kind of a way to make us all kind of work on the same page. Well, that hasn't happened since COVID was happening. So not quite yet. This year we didn't have them join us, but I was told that on the next cycle they will. That we are now reducing the protocols to the point where it really was just business as usual. Then after that 1 day of ground, you have 3 days, at least at Legacy, you have 3 days of simulator event. Now, traditionally, the simulator event was 1 day of simulator maneuvers and approaches and things like that with a simulator instructor, not a check airman. Okay, now this is a person that doesn't necessarily even need to be typed on the airplane. They're just a teacher. They're an instructor. And that's what we had. An interesting thing that happened, that's where I met my captain for the simulator events on that day 1. And we figured out that we had flown together before. And we're sitting there, we're kind of chit-chatting at the beginning of our session in our briefing. You get about an hour and a half of briefing before you go into the simulator, so you know what you're going to do. And the simulator instructor said, hey, we have an observer. They're not here for you. They're here for me because I need to get observed 3 times a year. And so he's just a fellow sim instructor in the department who's going to be observing me. And, it doesn't have to happen today. If you guys feel uncomfortable with him being here, just speak up and we can reschedule it. It's not like it has to happen today. And we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. We're fine with that. So about 10 minutes later, a gentleman walks in and he's wearing an N95 mask on top of another N95 mask. And we both kind of looked at each other like, okay. And he goes, if you're curious, yeah, it's COVID. And we went, wait, what? He goes, yeah, I guess 5 days ago I tested positive and they told me that I have to isolate for 5 days. Today's day 6. I told them, can I stay home and do I have to come to work? And they're like, no, you can come back to work. It's been 6 days. You only need to isolate for 5 days from the positive test. They didn't even want another test indicating that it was negative. They just told him, yeah, show up to work. And he goes, but if you guys don't want me here, like he didn't even enter the room. He was like from the doorway. He's like, if you guys don't feel comfortable with me here or in the simulator, speak up now or forever hold your peace because I'll just go home. And the captain was very hesitant. He was like, I don't know. I don't think 5 days is enough. I think what happened to 14 days of quarantine and all that stuff. And he goes, yeah, they changed all that. And they kind of want us to come back to work because we're so hammered and we need to get this done.
Yeah.
And then the simulator instructor goes, are you guys okay with it? Because I'm okay with it because he's wearing a mask and he's going to be behind you guys. And I mean, but we're in the simulator, so it's like 4 hours in a box. And I looked at him and I looked at my captain. My captain was like, I could see it. He wanted to say no, but at the same time, he didn't want to be the one to kind of stick his foot out and say, nope, it's not going to happen. So I looked at the second instructor and I said, if I'm uncomfortable with you being here today, do you get to go home with pay? And he goes, it's funny you should ask me that. He goes, yes, I would get to go home with pay. And I looked at the captain, and I looked at the instructor, and I went, well, then, and then the simulator instructor, our normal simulator instructor goes, yeah, okay, let me stop you right there. Will you go home and work on the schedule for the simulator? He's like, yeah, that's what I was going to do. He's like, okay, yeah, I'm not comfortable. Go ahead, go home.
That's great.
Well,
so we both kind of went, okay, because that would have been hard to explain. Like you knowingly had someone,
yeah,
but the protocols have changed, and boy, how far we have come from the beginning of this whole thing to now, where it's like, yeah, I had it 5 days ago, but everybody says go back to work. You don't need to be here.
I think they're treating it just like the common flu now.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, I really do.
Great. I think that's what we kind of wish we were able to do that a while ago, because a lot of people lost their livelihoods, their jobs, their businesses, obviously their lives too, and that we can't forget that. I mean, it's a very serious thing, but it's nice to see we're at this stage now, and let's just moving on
back to business. And that's what we did. Back to business. We had that first day of sim, pretty much the same stuff we normally do. I was nervous, but nothing major happened. Went back to the hotel at the end of that event. I had the slot that it was at 8:30 a.m. showtime for the pre-beef, and then it was 10 a.m. sim. So you went 10 to 2, and then you had you're supposed to have like an hour debrief at the end of it, but we pretty much debriefed.
But you LAXers are used to those red eye stuff, so I think
it wasn't.
It kind of fits right into your buckle.
Well, it wasn't too bad. It really wasn't too bad. Actually, the first day, I misspoke. The first day was an evening event. So it was like 7 p.m. until close to midnight. And then the next day was like exactly 10 hours, whatever it was. So I think it was 10 p.m. And then I had to be there at 8:30 a.m. So it was exactly 10 hours.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was the other way around.
Yeah, no, it was late night the first night. Yeah, and then early morning on the next 2 events. So that was kind of like, wow, that's 10 hours of rest between simulator events. That's kind of weird, but whatever. So we just showed up, and on this day 2, this is where the change was. On day 2, we normally would do the maneuvers validation, and that's pretty much it. And it was pretty impacted. They would do like stalls and things like that too. But instead, on day 2, we did maneuvers validation on the first half. Then we took a break for about 10 minutes. And then on the second half, we basically did our RAD, which was the maneuvers like controlled flight into terrain, how to avoid, in case you get, to avoid CFIT. We got wind shear. We got all that stuff. And it's always, it's like, they call it first look. So they're not supposed to tell you what's happening. They're just supposed to just kind of go, but it's trainable. So if you don't kind of get it right, they help you through it until you get it right. And there was plenty of time for that. Then here's the funny part. We went back to the hotel in the afternoon, and we both looked at each other and go, hey, I'm going to take a nap, and then we'll get together for dinner. We can study for tomorrow, because the next day is the big one. That's where you do like a flight, nonstop flight, and they'll throw like a non-normal procedure in the middle of the flight. And the simulator check airman who's in there, they're not helping you. They're acting as ATC, flight attendant, ground personnel, whatever you need. But they're not there to train you or help you. You're just supposed to work together, use the threat and error management model, and figure it out. And it was going to be a JFK to Los Angeles flight. And I'm thinking, that's a long flight. And traditionally, they.
Oh, you're diverting somewhere. So go ahead.
Right. So, and I read the gouge, which there's plenty of gouge online on the actual company website. There also is airbusdriver.net, which is a great resource for legacy Airbus pilots. And people that go through, they'll put up like a blog going, hey, this is what I saw and this is what I had. And so I reviewed some of that, but very minuscule, because I kept hearing Roger in the back of my head going, you airline guys, all you guys study, you should know this, what are you studying for? You're making yourself nervous. Yeah. So we went back to the hotel, and we walked into the hotel, and this is at I won't say which hotel it is, but it's the traditional default training hotel for legacy airlines. And I dare say that Sandpiper stays there too. And there was no air conditioning in the whole building. They did not have wall units for each room. It's all central air.
Wow.
And so we walk in, and by the way, there was a heat advisory for Dallas Fort Worth.
Really?
That whole week. We were 102 degrees outside.
June and July, there was a heat.
Can you believe that? So I get to my room, which was on the 4th floor, and my room on the 4th floor was hotter than
heat rises,
because the heat goes up, right? It was hotter than when you walked in the front door. So I was like, this is not going to work. So I text my captain, hey, I'm going to give this an hour. If they don't get the air working in an hour, I'm out of here. I can't do this. And he goes, okay, let me know. So I called downstairs. I'm like, how much longer? And of course, they were curt. I'm sure they were full of phone calls that day. And so after an hour, I just started packing up my stuff, and I made a phone call, and I called the training department hotel desk, and I said, hi, this is First Officer Tony. And he just interrupts me. He goes, do you want a new room or not? I'm like, oh, okay. Is that what people are doing? Are they changing hotels? And he's like, do you want a new room or not? I'm like, yes, sir, I do. It's 102 degrees in my room. I want a new room. He was like, okay, call me back in half an hour, or check your training management system, your TMS, and I'll put a new hotel in there. I was like, okay. So I packed up my stuff, and I got everything ready, and I went downstairs, and I went to go check out, and the 22-year-old behind the front desk was like, what do you want? I'm like, checking out.
Where are you going?
I'm checking out. He goes, fine. And so I give him the key, and he was very curt. And so because that's all he did, is everyone was bailing on his hotel. And so I'm sitting there waiting for transportation and waiting for a hotel. I didn't even know what hotel I was going to. And so I finally called him, because I was downstairs for about 10 minutes. And he goes, yeah, you're going to the Holiday Inn back over here and wherever. And I was like, okay, how do I get there? And he's like, well, you got to take the bus to go back to the training center. And then from there, you got to wait for the bus that takes you to the second hotel. And I'm like, that's going to take like an hour and a half. So I look outside, and I see the van that was going to take everyone to the airport. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do, because the airport's air conditioned, and I can, So meanwhile, a busload of people that are checking into the hotel shows up. And they're all waiting in line to check in. God. And I look at them, and I go, well, some of them were crew members, and some of them were, whatever. And I look over, and I go, are any of you guys checking in? And like, they were like ignoring me, like, who's this crazy guy? And I go, because there's no air conditioning in this hotel, by the way. And they all went, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, they're not telling anyone. They're not telling anyone at check-in that there's no air conditioning. because it's not too bad down here on the first floor. And they're like, oh, so a couple of them turned around. The guy gave me a dirty ass look. I walked out.
Yeah.
And I took the bus to the airport, and then I was calling them, going, "Hey, I'm going to be at Terminal A or whatever. Send a van." And I waited maybe 5 minutes, and I was in the new hotel within 35 minutes of when I left the first one. It worked out perfect.
Nice.
And I actually had an air conditioned room. I could get my rest, and I was ready for my basically checking event of the recurrent training. And that last day was actually pretty cool. And what I did was, it's a normal departure. The captain goes, "You're flying this leg." And we did that because, hey, if we're going to divert an emergency, what does the captain usually do? He hands the airplane over to the first officer so that the captain can coordinate with dispatch, with SOC, with the station wherever we're diverting to, with ATC, with the flight attendants, with the PAs to the passengers. The captain's responsible for coordinating all of this when we end up at a destination other than what's planned on our flight plan. So normally what happens is the captain will hand the aircraft over to the first officer until all the coordination is complete, and then he or she will brief the arrival, the approach into the alternate destination. And then if the captain was the one originally flying, they'll take back the aircraft, land the airplane, crisis averted. Then once we're on the ground, we figure out what else is going to do with diversion criteria, information the company needs, and all that stuff. So since we kind of had an idea that this was going to happen, we just said, "Hey, you know what, Tony, you fly this leg, And so that's what we did. We took off, everything was normal, and then the check airman goes, "Okay, and by the power of 3,000 mile an hour winds behind you, okay, you're now 200 miles from Los Angeles." I'm like, "Dang, that's a strong jet stream, bro. I'm going in the opposite direction too." So
real life scenario.
Yeah, real life scenario, right? That's gonna happen. The perfect storm. So
That's hilarious.
So we're getting there, and we're like, okay, well, we should probably brief the arrival. So the second the captain goes, "Okay, let's brief the arrival. We're going to be descending on the Angel," and ding! Oh, what's this? Cargo smoke. Oh, okay.
That's a good one.
My aircraft. Your aircraft?
Yeah.
Is that an ECAM exception, or, is it a
quick action
or ECAM exception? So you look at it. There's a trick. Because there is a ECAM exception for cargo smoke on the ground.
All right.
Okay. And if you see the header cargo smoke and you don't read the second part that's in brackets saying on the ground, you might be triggered to go through that event, which would be incorrect. So he goes, "Okay, what do we have? Cargo smoke. Okay, Tony, continue flying the airplane. I'll run through the follow-up items and the ECAM procedure." I'm like, okay. So he goes, "Why don't you go ahead and declare an emergency because it's going to have us divert?" And I said, okay. So I took care of that while he was running through the checklist. And we were looking over each other's shoulders probably every 30 seconds to go, okay, is he got everything okay going on his side? And then he would look over on my side and go, okay, does he have everything okay going on my side? And what I was involved in doing, once I declared the emergency, they immediately said, "All right, you're going to your alternate Las Vegas. Okay, you're cleared to Las Vegas via this. So I am flying the airplane on autopilot and writing down the instructions. I have to change the destination in the flight management system, which is not something we do every day. Then I had to load an approach. I knew it was Las Vegas, so I had to load the single engine missed approach procedure in the secondary flight plan. I also had to put in all of the land app criteria because it's considered a high elevation airport. Plus, it was hot. So even if it wasn't, I still had to run the land app because the temperature was hot. And I had to start an immediate descent because they had us high. And so I was doing all this, loading everything up in the FMS, what they call the box, right? But some instructors don't like it to be called the box for whatever political correctness.
Whatever
so we call it, the FMS system or the FMGC, Flight Management Guidance Computer. So I do all this, and I was prepared. I was Johnny on the spot. I didn't sit there struggling, looking for pages. I ran everything. I got it all set up. And by the time my captain was finished with his checklist procedure, he goes, all right, Tony, where are we at? And I said, okay, autopilot's on. We're descending to this 1,000 feet. We're cleared this arrival on this approach. Here's the ATIS information. The secondary flight plan has been loaded with the single engine procedure. The land app has been completed. You need this much runway for this particular weight. And whenever you're ready, I will take a briefing from you and then your aircraft. And he's like, okay. he actually, so we did it. And at the end of it, this lasted maybe an hour and 45 minutes in the simulator, the whole from takeoff to touchdown. And we came through, we landed. As soon as we stopped on the runway, he goes, all right, my simulator, great job, guys. He goes, I've been doing this since January 1st, or February 1st, which is when this scenario has been going on. He goes, most of the time, everybody misses one or two things, and that's okay. It gives us something to talk about in the debrief. He goes, as long as it didn't affect the safety of flight, it's not a disqualifying thing. He goes, you guys hit every single box. He goes, great job. Thanks for coming prepared. Yeah, we got the clapping and everything. Everybody was happy.
Golf clap.
It's like, oh yeah, no problem. Yeah. We pat each other on the back a little bit. We took a 10-minute break, and he goes, hey guys, instead of taking a full 15, 20-minute break, let's take a 10-minute break. Let's get back in there. Let's knock out everything else we have to do. And we thought he just wanted to go home early. But come to find out, what we normally would do on day 3 of the simulator, which was the control flight into terrain, all that stuff, we didn't do any of that because we did it on day 1 of the sim. So we flew into, I think it was Aspen. So we had to do that whole procedure into there. We had to do the NADP1 procedure out of DCA, which is new. So if you're departing out of DCA, you don't level off at 1,000 feet or 1,500 feet. Now it's not 1,000, it's 15 and 3,000.
1,500, 3,000, yeah.
Yeah, plus we had to load the single engine procedure, and we thought, hey, this is just the NADP1 training event. And it was my leg, and as soon as we hit V1 rotate, ba-boom, lost an engine. Lost the right engine. So what happens to the airplane? It wants to put you right into the PLVIA, which is the prohibited area.
P56.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which, did you know PLVIA is prohibited?
P56 in Roman numerals.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm wicked smart. I'm wicked spot.
Alex's expression just went boom.
I was wondering the name of that, because we talked about it. We were flying in and doing something with DCA, and we set up the PLVIA, a little mile ring that they have us set around there, and
yeah,
I'm like, why the hell? What's the significance of PLVIA? Why PLVIA?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why can't they do like what they used to have before? The 5-letter identifier for White House, WHTSE or something like that.
Yeah.
That would have been a great, database reference for the White House. But hey, they got to make it more complicated because I cannot do Roman numerals, and the only reason why I knew that is because somebody else told me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have figured it out either. So
So talk about,
it's like when you're reading the FARs and you're getting to the sections and they start referencing Roman numerals and letters and stuff like that. I always kind of just say it out loud. I'm like, with exception to 61.99.IVI Roman. Just read them out. And you're like, I don't know what that is. That's 6 or 12. I don't know.
You skipped that day of 3rd grade, huh?
Yeah, dude.
I'm sorry, they didn't teach us Roman numerals back in 3rd grade.
What? Really?
Hey, you don't even know what school I went. My education was fantastic.
Fantastical.
Yeah.
So that's what happened, and I was not expecting that at all. So the airplane kind of went, I was looking at the ND, the navigation display, and I was like, oh crap. So now I'm high banking it to the left to try to counteract. And then I was like, oh yeah, rudder. the slip skid indicator was all the way on the other side. I mean, no one died. The simulator did not, go red screen of death. But it happened, and the captain was like, "I was not expecting that at all." I'm like, "You weren't. Neither was I." And the instructor was just cracking up, laughing. He's like, "And that's why we do that, because that's what would happen in real life."
What would happen?
And he goes, "But I want to see it again, Tony. Guess what's going to happen?" I'm like, "Okay, I'm ready now." And that time it was like textbook, it was textbook, but that was my 4 days of recurrent, 3 days of simulator, 1 day of ground. It was a really good experience. My captain was so prepared, and I was so grateful to have flown with someone who I just kind of clicked with from the very first start. We did do, after all that, craziness, we did end up doing a 58-page ECAM procedure.
Oh,
wow.
I did not know we had a 58-page ECAM procedure, and for the life of me, I can't remember. It was so traumatic, I just rammed up the whole thing. But something came up, and I don't know what it was. It was with the ADRs. Okay, and it was not the uncommanded pitch or anything that we used to have a memory item for. It was not that. It was something else. I think we took off with an MEL for the number 2 ADR, which meant we had to use the switching panel and grab the information from the number 3 ADR, Air Data Reference System, something like that, right? ADRS. So basically the computers that give heading and all that information. One of them failed. There's 3 of them on the Airbus, and we were grabbing information from 2. And then once you get level off from this, section of the training event, your other 2 basically fail. So, what are you going to have? And so they went through 5 different scenarios, because it's 58 pages, because there's 5 different scenarios that you can have. You can have 2 fail, 1 fail, 3 fail, all fail, some fail partially. Some you don't have any instruments but your backup. Some you can have everything. So we went through all of it. And at one point, the instructor looks at me and goes, "Tony, are you okay?" I'm just sitting there with glassy eyes going,
I got to tell you, the way some of these things are worded in the QRH, it's tough to read it. I mean, you have to really slow down and go, almost, you have to go word by word. Normally would, but some QRHs, I remember the 175's QRH was very, very just read it, and for the most part, it made sense. The steps you were doing, everything that you were doing made sense. As far as the Airbus, it's the way they word things. You have to think backwards, the way they're doing it. For instance, when we're doing our land app stuff, when the criteria for a standard landing criteria, the way they word it on that thing, it's so it's if it's not 7,500 feet or less,
right.
Or if it's not this, I'm like, well, wait a minute, just tell me if it's 7,500 feet or less, I have to do it. It's you have to switch your brain around to read the QRH and some of the manual stuff. And if you had to go through a lengthy procedure with a bunch of, with a bunch of steps or a bunch of procedures that you have to, really, really focus on, it can get pretty daunting.
Yeah. And I think the only reason I have always kind of got it is because I can remember back to my freshman year of high school, and I was in my computer science class, and we were learning Turbo Pascal. Alex, that's a computer program that people used to.
I'm aware, Tony. I'm aware.
And there was a lot of if then or what they called Boolean logic. Yeah, I saw that. I'm number 1. Boolean logic, right? If then, and that's how you would write these programs in Turbo Pascal. It's okay, if the input is this, then run this code.
Then you do this.
Right. Yeah. And so, and the logic in your QRH is going to be identical. So like you said, Rob, you really, really have to read those lines and translate what you just read into logic, because a lot of times you read that line and you're like you said, if it's not this and it's possibly this, but not that, then do this. But you have to choose one of these. If it's this or not that, then do that, but not this. And you're sitting there going, what?
Yeah. And thank God it's hyperlink too.
Yeah.
Hyperlink.
Yeah, that's a nice thing.
Definitely makes
Back
it.
in the day, you used to have to thumb through
Flip
pages.
pages.
Yeah.
And then you forget which page you started on, and
Right.
you could have to refresh. Oh boy.
I remember when we used to
Anyway.
like take paper from the printer and we would rip it into like little tabs, and as you're running the
Yeah.
QRH, you would stick that paper in
Stick
there,
the
and then
paper
you
in
go
there.
to the next part, and then it goes,
Yeah.
go back to where you were, and you would have it bookmarked with this ripped paper.
Yeah, ACARS paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to do that.
Those days are
Yep.
over.
Yep.
I've got to say, I love having the iPad and running that QRH because you get the ours has the very beginning and it's all the ICAST messages. And Rob will probably remember this. It's hyperlinked. You click the hyperlink, it takes you there. If you need to go back, there's on the bottom, there's like a little back arrow. It'll take you back to the previous page you were on.
Yeah.
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 It's
lucky.
I think we use the same Comply 365 or whatever it is.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's
but hey,
cool.
guys, I want to talk about something that's just so exciting. Now, we dispelled this, okay? We thought, oh, hey, the FBI has investigated. It's clear. It's a balloon. It's just a balloon, a Mylar balloon shaped like a character from a movie. It's no big deal. But maybe it's not. Jetpack Man is back. FAA investigating new report near LAX. This is from an article that I pulled off of Fox LA by KJ Hiromoto on June 23rd. And it's just, I was so happy to hear this. Is the infamous Jetpack Man back?
Guy plenty of exposure.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a legend, right? According to the Federal Aviation Administration, an airline pilot reported spotting something resembling a jetpack near LAX around 2:35 p.m. on Thursday. We heard that Jetpack Man is back, air traffic control said in audio obtained by Fox 11. I have a report of a jetpack at 4,500 feet over a gate in the section, which is 6 miles east of your present position. We have audio. Thanks to this report, let's take a listen.
626 Heavy Tower.
Go ahead, 396.
Hey, we just got a report of Jetman coming back at 4,500 feet over gate. Do you happen to see anything out there in front of?
Say that again?
Yeah, we heard that the Jetpack Man is back. Just wondering if you saw anything on final.
No, we didn't see Jetpack Man.
Ah, you missed out. Okay, have a good day.
Sheriff 8, you got time to go chase a jetpack?
Traffic for Sheriff 8.
Have a report of a jetpack 4,500 feet over gate intersection, which is about 6 miles east of your present position.
All right, Sheriff 8, look for the...
We're going to go on just north of the 105, west of the 1. Sheriff 8, Roger. Report on station there, and that might need to be passed on to another unit you've got, but yeah.
So from Fox Station, they have the audio for that. It's possible that it was just another confirmed sighting. The fact is that a guy in a jetpack, this isn't the first time the jetpack mystery was made headlines here in Los Angeles. Back in December of 2020 over Palos Verdes, he made a very brief run at the center of internet rumors and conspiracy theories after the Sling Pilot Academy shared a video on social media showing what may resemble a guy in a jetpack. Months prior to that, the FBI jumped into investigation on a different case near LAX as a jetpack guy was reported being spotted around 3,000 feet in the air near passing aircraft. Now, we kind of like been talking about this guy, possibility of a guy in a jetpack. Now, probability is low because if you were taking off in a jetpack, you don't think the neighbors would be sitting there videotaping every single second of that? I mean, this would have to be like some monster gorilla jetpack in a van jumping out, taking off in the middle of the, but this is in the middle of the day.
Or how about somebody with all these Ring cameras or doorbell cams or whatever? You can't tell me that there isn't footage of him taking off.
Right. Right.
I know. There's got to be something, man. I mean, they're able to catch, murderers and, child molesters and all these things going on, and they can't. There's got to be something out there that could see it where he's taking off from and landing from.
I still think it's a balloon. I really do. I think it's like either an astronaut balloon or a party balloon or a balloon that made to look like some kind of, I don't know, space cowboy. But I don't know. Anything's possible. It could be a guy in a lawn chair and a drone. I mean, we've heard of people doing it with hot air balloons and helium balloons and a rifle. Remember?
Yeah.
What was that? 1970s.
Yeah.
I want it to be real.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I do
we
too.
want it to be real because we want to, the balls on that guy.
Yeah, like
no kidding.
I want it to be real for a multitude of reasons, but like it's a balloon. It has to be a balloon.
Yeah. In all seriousness, though, can you imagine how dangerous that is? I mean, you can imagine when a 7-pound bird gets ingested into an airplane engine.
Ask Roger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Can you imagine a 200-pound man with 100 pound of gear on it? Metal.
Yeah.
That's
crazy.
This is crazy. And we're going to hear more about holiday travel, the untold truth about the pilot shortage, right after this break.
Nice. Yeah. It's more enjoyable.
Protein shakes and
Wow.
Oh, God, I bet the cockpit smells wonderful with you in it.
Yeah.
No, actually, I don't do the whey protein.
What'd you say, Tony?
No, I've been doing the soy protein. It doesn't affect me that much.
What's going on?
Or
sure.
I'll do it like at the end of like on the descent on the last leg. That way, by the time I get to the hotel, then it's like. Freaking windows are shaking. And you're like, a person next to you in the room next to you is like, hey, keep it down.
Courtesy flush, please. Courtesy flush.
Like,
Light a match in there or something.
What's this purple fumes in here? And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Well, we've been talking about all kinds of stuff like ground, school simulator events, eCam procedures, human factors. And of course, the jetpack man. But now we're going to talk about something that really, it's hard, but everybody is being bombarded by headlines of cancellations and pilot shortages. And we're going to just dive a little bit into it. We're going to kind of scratch the surface from a pilot's perspective, from a couple pilots and that have been in the industry a while, and a pilot that's now coming into the industry that grew up in the industry really, but coming into his own. So we can kind of get our perspective. Is the news media getting it right? If I had to put a number on it, I'd say about 15 to 20% of it is correct. There are probably a good 80% to 85% of what they're not talking about. We're not going to dive into it and with such details because that would be an entire 3-episode podcast right there. Just, and maybe that's something we want to dive into in the future. But for now, we're just going to kind of talk about some of the headlines. One of them, it was a really good article that came actually yesterday, July 5th, from the Washington Post, in an article by Lori Aratani. And she wrote a nice piece entitled "Holiday Travelers See Fewer Flights Cancellations, Still Some Headaches." So it really wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. It wasn't smooth, she writes, for everyone, but the busiest travel weekend of the year was not the disaster some had feared. The Independence Day holiday saw fewer flight cancellations compared with recent holiday weekend, despite a large number of delays. Between Friday and Monday, 1,435 flights, about 1.5% of the scheduled domestic flights, were canceled, according to flight tracking website FlightAware. That number was down from 2,653 flights that were canceled during the 4-day travel period over Memorial Day weekend. The July 4th travel weekend also brought fewer delays than Memorial Day, even though about 1 in 5 scheduled flights experienced disruptions, according to FlightAware. So really, it sounds like it wasn't that bad. The Federal Aviation Administration, which the airline industry has blamed for some of the flight issues, said in a statement Tuesday it took several steps to ensure that aircraft could operate safely over the holiday weekend, including adding alternative routes, putting more air traffic controllers in high-demand areas, and increasing overtime to keep air traffic moving over the holiday weekend. In the days leading up to the July 4th, Buttigieg hosted a virtual meeting with airline executives, pressing them on what steps they were taking to improve performance. And we talked about that actually in the last show.
We did.
I can say from personal experience this holiday weekend. So my family was in Tyler, Texas on the last week. They came in the day before, so the 1st. They came into, they were going to leave and travel out that day to go back home. Well, the flight from Tyler to Dallas was just slammed. So flying standby was non-existent. Mm-hmm. So they drove from Tyler to my hotel. And then the next morning, we all got on the plane the next morning. I was on a go home pass because it was my parents' 50th anniversary that day. So nice. I needed to be home.
Congratulations to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's huge. I mean, 50 doesn't happen anymore.
No.
So,
yeah.
But it was weird because I was on an A3 pass and they were on standby. And I was like, well, it doesn't look like we're going to get on, but maybe I can give up my seat, and I can go in the jump seat and try to work all these workarounds. Had a not so pleasant experience with one of the gate agents.
Really?
Oh, terrible.
You don't say.
Terrible experience.
Huh.
The guy that I was working with at the agent was fantastic, and then the supervisor came in. But anyways, we all got on the flight.
Good.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing sometimes when you're non-revving, and it's no way of knowing as an employee. But sometimes the gate agents know that there's going to be 20 misconnects.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at it and you're like, there's only one open seat and there's 5 of us. There's no way we're going to get on. So you don't even try. But then all of a sudden you try, you get there and you're like, yeah, you all got seats and you all got seats together. Congratulations. And you're like, wait a minute, what?
And that's what happened is like, it was basically something like that where they were talking and they're like, well, we got 2 locals and the rest are all, through travelers and they're not here. So we didn't sit together.
My wife and daughter, they non-revved up to Boston on Thursday. And the flight was leading up to it was like, red with like 5 seats available or something like that.
Yeah.
And then of course you wake up in the morning and you look at the loads and the non-rev list is like 25D and they're like number 12 or 13 as a D1, because of the rollovers. Yeah. Right. You're like, dude, this is just crazy. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they're like, hey, we got on. I'm like, how in the world did y'all get on with only 5 seats? And, a lot of people just didn't show up.
Yeah.
And so they were able to get a seat, which that happened for me and my daughter coming back from Indianapolis. Same scenario. That was July 4th. Leading up to that day, the loads actually looked really good for that. And it's why we kind of chose to travel back on July 4th because the loads were really light.
Yeah.
And again, the day before, things loaded up. And next thing you know, there's only like 3 seats available. And of course, if I'm just traveling with my daughter, we only need 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a couple of non-rev oversales on, come onto our flight. So they got seats, and then that left 1 seat, and it just so happened to be first class. So my daughter was like, yeah. So he was in heaven riding home, and it was a window seat, 4th of July evening time. I told her, as we descend in Dallas, make sure your head's out the window looking for all those fireworks displays because that's a pretty cool perspective for us. So I was up in the jump seat, and I saw the great view from up there, and then of course my daughter had her view, and she came off the airplane with a whole bunch of iPhone photos of some of the displays. So anyway, the loads are crazy, man.
Yeah, and that's going to be the norm now, probably for the next 90 days. Is the loads are going to be crazy. employees are not going to be able to non-rev anywhere. They have different classes. So you have a positive space non-revenue. Then you have your just standby non-revenue, and then in those classifications you have your through passenger through. So like you started in LA, you end up in Dallas, and then from Dallas you're going to connect with another flight as a non-rev to say Baltimore. Well, you get a higher priority once you're in Dallas because you've already flown one leg, so you're a through passenger. So those get higher priority than just a regular D2 or D1 or however.
It still goes by check-in time, but you're right. They still, if they checked in earlier for the previous flight, then they'll get a higher level priority.
Yeah.
So,
and all this is being blamed right now in the media by pilot shortage. They're saying, "Oh, there's pilot shortage." The companies and some media outlets are getting a lot of it right. In terms of, they had early retirements during COVID and they let people go, and some people retired early just for the fun of it. Some people were given severance packages to leave early. We have pilots that are going to be collecting full employment or full pay for probably a couple more years because they took one of those packages
early out.
And here we are, the statistic that I was told while I was in the schoolhouse by the simulator instructor was the previous year, the company was able to hire 1,456 new hires and get them trained and out the door with no problem. And it was the most they were able to train on top of doing all the recurrent training that was required for the year. It was the biggest number that they've had, I think he said, ever. And then as soon as that statistic came out, the company goes, "We're going to hire 2,000 pilots next year." And everyone in the schoolhouse went, "Wait,
no way we're going to do that.
We barely just squeaked through with 1,450, and now you want us to do 2,000? That's not going to happen." And at the time, they were going to close the Charlotte training center and just have all the training in one location in Dallas. And they reneged on that too. Obviously, that just can't do it. Now we have check airmen that are stepping down because they're being overworked, they're exhausted, and they're like, there's no end in sight. They're flying like 90 plus hours. They're in the simulator for hundreds of hours a month. They're just wore out. In the simulators and ground schools, they're going almost 24 hours around the clock with just only a few hours every day for maintenance where they're down.
Was there any stats given to you about how many people they have actually hired up to this point? Because it would have to be 1,000 if you kind of do the math,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. However, he did say that they've had some very, very large classes come through in the last 60 days, and they've all been able to get them trained. I did see a lot of numbers of pilots coming in for recurrent, and then they would do their ground school, and then they were sent home on day 2 because they didn't have a simulator instructor or a seat filler or something. And then they go home and if they're still qualified, they go back on the line, fly their schedule for another month until they can go back. And that's what happened to you?
Well, no, I was going to say, I raised my hand because I'm kind of banking on that, believe it or not. I have I am currently in my base month.
Okay.
So next month is my grace month.
Right.
And they were not able, I bid for and did not get awarded training in June. I bid for and did not get awarded training here in July. And now we're going into August, and I just got my bid award. And I know I just bid a few classes that, seemed like the right days.
Sure.
I really didn't have anything serious going on in next month that I needed to really be, have the time off for.
Yeah.
So I just kind of randomly bid. I got the 30th of August.
So if
I turn into a pumpkin, obviously on 31st. So
So if you don't
there's any kind of
pass,
delay,
they're going to make you a priority. If you don't pass, then you go unqualified, and you cannot touch an airplane until you get qualified.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's happening.
So we'll see.
And then, but they're so, like, it's kind of like the healthcare system in this country right now. You go and make an appointment, you're going to wait to go see your doctor. And then if you need a follow-up appointment, you're going to wait because they're just so backlogged. There's just not enough healthcare providers, healthcare professionals. They just can't keep up with the demand rubber band effect that we were talking about 2 years ago from COVID. All those people that weren't going to the hospital in fear of catching COVID while they're in the hospital, which some still do, And
Mm-hmm.
so what's happened is now everyone wants to get in now, but of course now their ailments have progressed and they might need a little bit more treatment. And so it's overrun the system, and the numbers are down of healthcare professionals because a lot of during the time when vaccinations were going to be required and there were those that didn't want to take them, they ended up leaving the profession entirely. So
Yeah.
you have a less number of professionals available. You have more people trying to get appointments, and it just makes a huge backlog. And it's no different here in the training environment for major airlines in this country. Is that we had all these people, they parked a bunch of airplanes. Those people had to get requalled. I was told that everyone that was waiting for their new aircraft equipment training has been able to go through. They knocked that out during the COVID protocol time. So they were able to get everyone because they stopped hiring for a little bit. So they got everyone in to their new equipment. So no one's supposedly waiting to get into their new equipment.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening, like you said, Rob, which may happen to you, is people are getting pushed into their grace month, and then they get pushed out of qualification, and they're like, well, sorry, we didn't have an instructor for you for day 3. You're going to have to come back for that. We're going to have to reschedule it, and we can't schedule it this month because it's full. So you're kind of either on a wait list where they call you and go, hey, can you come tomorrow? Or you get to sit at home.
Give me a call. I'll be on my boat. Just let me know.
Yeah.
When it's time.
I'll be fishing.
And let's also not let's not forget about us too at the regionals. Like, we're experiencing the exact same thing you guys are, except the only difference is you guys are poaching off from us. So we don't have anybody coming in the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was a time years ago when, we were crying pilot shortage, and the main lines were going, there's no pilot shortage. I don't know what you're talking about. We got plenty of pilots to pull from. We got application stacks this tall. But as checkmen at the regional airlines, Rob and I were talking about this, going, no, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. And what's going to happen as soon as the floodgates open and all these flow-throughs leave the regional? So you're going to have people leaving off the top, and you're not going to be able to fill just the regular attrition from the bottom. Now you're going to have an increased attrition through the people going to the main line. And what's going to happen is all that contracted out flying that main line does with their regional partners, that's going to shrivel up. And so what's going to happen is they're going to have to either pay you guys a lot more money. Oh, wow. Is that,
I heard that before.
Is that what's happening?
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Or they're going to feel the effects at mainline. Oh, wait.
Right.
Is that
but I think
wow.
I think we might have got off track here, though. But the whole, when we started out the story, though, weren't we going to talk about what's going on with all the flight cancellations and everything?
So the flight cancellations, we were gonna talk about how they anticipated because of this pilot shortage, and is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Is it accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, and is the reporting that we're receiving accurate? Well, Bill O'Reilly had to get in the mix. And he put, a story out on June 23rd titled "The Untold Truth About the Pilot Shortage," and I'm going to share that with you guys.
Airline chaos continues. Just yesterday, JetBlue, my favorite airline, 38% of their flights delayed in the United States. 38%. I mean, really. So, the West Virginia airport director, a guy named Nick Keller, said this quote. We're going to put it up so you can read it when I read it. There are pilot shortages and a lot of early retirements when COVID hit. Those pilots are not coming back. Then you have other pilots that age out. That is what is leading to some of the issues you're seeing now. This is according to Nick Keller. But the Airline Pilots Association says that's not true. So, one of my crack producers started to investigate this. Her name is Samantha Marciano. Now, I asked Sam, you really want me to tell everybody your name? She goes, yeah. All right. This is entirely on her. She went to the Airlines Pilots Association and said, is this true? There's not enough pilots? That's what's causing it? All right. And they said, it's not true. Here are the stats. Put them on the screen. In 2021, all right, and actually the last 12 months, 8,000 new pilots have been certified. 8,000. In 2020, 4,000. So double the amount of pilots have been certified than they were in 2020. Nobody will tell you that. Nobody knows that except us. So what the airlines are saying, and what I've said from the beginning, they're lying. They're lying. They just are so disorganized across the board and have scheduled so many flights that they just can't staff, whether it's a pilot, flight attendants, mechanics, whatever it may be, but they're not going to take those flights off the schedule, so we get hosed. That's what's happening. Now, they got $54 billion from us, taxpayers, for COVID relief. They could easily staff it and give everybody a raise, but they don't want to spend the money on personnel. So anyway, great work by Samantha Marciano. You'll hear that nowhere else in this country. I hope that's worth your time and subscription to BillO'Reilly.com.
You know, hold on, let me stop this one. Now, so Bill O'Reilly, okay, right-wing commentary about the country, about economics, about politics. Don't really follow him. Occasionally, you know, I'll see a blurb or a video, a comment that he made. I didn't like a couple things that he said about that. And it's not his fault. He's just... So commercial pilot certificates does not equate an airline job.
Nope.
Okay, we know this because we're in the industry. But maybe somebody that's listening, hello, listener, how are you? Maybe someone that's listening may not equate this. They might not know this. So a commercial pilot certificate is something that you get then after much time behind the controls of an aircraft, minimum 1,500 hours for an ATP unrestricted. Then you can start applying. And in some cases, as our very own Alex has demonstrated, at 1,480 hours or something like that, they're like, yep, but you're going to get the rest of the time in the schoolhouse, in the simulator. By the time you have to go for your ATP, you're going to have the minimum. And so there are ways around it. We've talked about this on the program before, that there are restricted ATPs going through a cadet academy, having military flight time experience, going to an accredited university and getting an aviation and science degree. All these factors come into play. You can get a job before the 1,500 hours. Don't get me wrong. But it's not a commercial pilot certificate. Now, a commercial pilot certificate is great when you want to get a job flying around, most of the time GA or corporate flying. But in this country, in order to be in the right seat of an airline, regional or otherwise, you need a minimum of an ATP. And that was after the Colgan crash in Buffalo, New York, that killed everyone on board. And it was, they deemed it pilot error on both the captain and the first officer. And it was just a horrific event. And it changed the way we now have jobs at the airlines. You no longer can get a job in an airline holding a commercial pilot certificate.
Nope.
So the statistics are great, but one does not, it's apples and oranges. One does not mean there are plenty of pilots out there for the airlines. And then look at the numbers. What do you say? 2,000 something versus 4,000?
8 and 4.
8 and 4?
Yeah.
8, 4,
Yeah,
and 8.
so 8 and 4. That's 4,000 more than we had last year in commercial pilot certificates. Even that's not even enough for one or two airlines, let alone all of the airlines in the country.
The only thing that I'll say on that is he did say that it came from ALPA. So maybe that's where he's getting the numbers, and maybe just he doesn't know
Did it
because
say
he's not in the
APA
industry.
or was that ALPA?
It was ALPA.
ALPA, Airline Pilots Association, yeah. Which ALPA represents a very large handful. Yeah, not everyone, but, you know, like they don't represent Southwest or American and a couple others out there. They have their own unions. There is talk, we've talked about here on the show, that, you know, we may not have a national seniority list. That may not be something that's practical right now in this industry and capitalism and all that stuff. But we could definitely, every single airline in the U.S. be part of one union instead of multiple unions. That could help. So yeah, I mean, the issue is, and he did hit this correctly. It's not just the pilots. It is mechanics. It's fuelers. It's flight attendants. It's baggage handlers. All of it. It all comes into
Yeah.
play.
He said mismanaged, which I agree.
I
think
100% agree with him.
Yeah. At
There's
the
a
end of the
lot
day,
of,
that's what it is. It's a mismanagement
Yeah.
of the resources you have. And if you're given billions of dollars in bailout money,
Yeah.
do you use that money to attract more people so
know.
you can fix the operation, or do you use
I
that
know.
money?
And it kills me that they have to say it like that, because it's true the way he said it, but it's also, we are working under completely and totally different circumstances from where we were at COVID. In COVID, there was no way to predict that this was going to happen, although they wanted to keep everybody on staff because they knew that they're going to need, the bodies to fly the airplanes once everything came back. But there was also a deadline that we gave, the government and everything, saying, if you can't do it by this time, we have no other choice, and we're forced to do what we have to do with furloughs, because, we have to be able to fund our payroll and everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah.
And if you end up, delaying it a day or 2 days or a week or something, we have to, it takes, it takes time to turn the ship around. It's a big operation, like we talked about.
Right.
And so now, here we are, we hit that point, and we had to do what we had to do. We had a furlough. I wouldn't say we had to, but we did. That's the path that we chose. That's how they crafted everything out for us. So anyways, we did.
Yeah.
And yes, we took that money because we were able to bring those pilots back, but the damage had already been done.
Yeah.
The LOAs for early outs and stuff like that had already been drafted. And at the time, there was nothing in the foreseeable future for these guys to come back to anyway.
Right.
So it was, at the time, it made sense. Well, here we are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Here we are.
And all the revenge flying is coming back, right? People that are,
it's
they're
big
like,
time.
oh, I've been stuck at home. I got to go on this family vacation,
It's big time.
Yeah.
It's bad. So it's rough. And then, I hate to even say anything about it, but now we had this little glitch.
Yes.
that happened the other day.
Great segue.
And that's creating some serious issues right now too.
Yeah, we're going to get to that here in just a moment. I know, Alex, you have maneuvers validation here coming up, so we're going to bid adieu to you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your studying and your rest to join us today. Appreciate it. We're going to hear from our meetup towards the end of the show, so I look forward to that as well.
I'll let you guys know how it goes after it's all said and done.
Man.
All right, sounds good.
I know you don't need it, so I'm not even going to say best of luck. Just go ahead and show them what you got, man. You're good for it.
Thanks, Rob.
Take care,
Appreciate
man.
it.
Yep. Have a good one, Alex.
Bye, guys.
Later.
Actually, you look much more clear now. That's weird.
Because I'm handsome. Anyway,
yes, you are.
You're a handsome man.
Yeah. And the pleasure's all yours. You'll be thankful you met me. Anyway, go ahead.
I already am, my friend. I already am. So this glitch you talked about, this AA scheduling glitch that throws thousands of pilots allows them to drop their trips. How dare they, right? How dare they? Well, we were listening to this happen at our sister company over there in real time, and it was interesting. And how did you find out? Were you in the middle of any kind of trip at the time, or were you already?
No, I was in Indianapolis with my daughter at that volleyball tournament, and I was sharing a VRBO with a fellow teammate, I should say. He's not a crew member. He just works for the company and at a high level in the company, director level. And he was going through his emails in the morning like he normally does for work on a vacation. And I was kind of just thumbing through social media and just looking through the news, and I came across, this glitch that had taken place. And so I mentioned to him, I said, hey, did you hear about this? This sounds like it's going to be a big deal. And he's like, no, what happened? So I kind of, led him on to the story. And he was like, oh, hold on, let me check with so-and-so. And he came back and he was like, oh, this is a big deal, man. This is going to create a lot of issues. But anyway, I wasn't affected directly.
Yeah, me neither.
My schedules. I think it I don't know if you know any details. I don't know very much about it, but basically, pilots bid on their schedules through a bidding system. It's a seniority-based industry. So the number one pilot in his equipment and base will bid his schedule, and then the number two pilot would then bid his schedule, and it's all done electronically. And at the end of the bidding cycle, the schedules are awarded, and you have basically your schedule for the next month.
Right.
Well, guys like me and probably guys like you will get a schedule. We bid on it, but we don't quite get what we like. So normally the secondary bidding cycle starts, and it's called trip trade. So you can trip trade with other pilots, or you can trip trade with a schedule of sequences that aren't filled, whether it's due to due to training, vacation, whatever the case may be. So you can take the trip that you have, let's say that starts on a Friday, goes to Saturday and Sunday, and let's say you see another trip that starts on, let's say, Tuesday, and you can fly Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So that's something that I like to do. So I'll try to trade it. Well, the company restricted all those trades from happening.
Yeah.
Because they were afraid that because of the holiday, 4th of July and all that stuff, that guys were going to, basically drop all of the stuff that they have over the holiday weekend and choose to fly other days, leaving all those flights on the holiday unstaffed. So they electronically locked that down from happening. Well, something happened on Friday. I think it was Friday, maybe it was Thursday. The day, 1 or 2 days doesn't make a big difference, but something happened where electronically in the scheduling department, those trades were allowed to happen.
Right.
And I think they said over 1,000 flights or 1,000 schedules.
We'll have that. Yeah, it's 12,000.
You have all the details on that?
12,000 flights. Yeah. So I have an article. Let's go through the article,
Okay.
and then I was flying, and I will kind of fill in some of the gaps there. But yeah, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. According to CNBC, they had an article that came out on July 2nd by Leslie Josephs, and she kind of has the detail down. Did the union give them this story? I think they did. So American Airlines scheduling glitch that allows pilots to drop thousands of flights in July was the issue. The key points to this article, I'll just tell you those. The pilots union said that aviators were able to drop assignments that included 12,000 flights. American said that the most trips were restored. Talk about that. And that doesn't expect an impact to its operation. The union and American are discussing higher pay for pilots whose trips were reinstated. We'll also talk about that. And a similar issue occurred in 2017, just before Christmas. And that's exactly what I thought about when I saw this.
The green Christmas, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So now, you mentioned green. The trip trade system, or the trip trade with open time system, both of those systems work on a premise of green, yellow, red, or redder. Now, if the trip you own is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday trip, all of them were turned into what they call redder, meaning you couldn't trade it away for a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday trip if you tried, because those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday trips were red, and the trip that you had was redder. So whenever you try
like a traffic light system,
exactly,
red is like, and they have red and redder. So
right.
That's what people don't understand that either, is that you have red and redder. So redder is worse than red.
They should call it purple, something. So what happened was the company arbitrarily just said, you know what, we have staffing problems. We want all hands on deck. We're going to make every trip that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If it touches those days, they're all going to be redder. That way people can't trade away, and then we're going to have a lot of open time trips that are open, missing a pilot or two on the weekend. We don't want that because most of our flying's done on the weekend during July and August. So they blocked it. And the union sent out an email that day saying, hey, if you were one of these pilots that was affected, you're trying to trade stuff, which is part of our contract. It's part of the way we operate. It's a quality of life quality that the contract has, that we can trade trips upon availability of other trips, and we should be able to do that. Now, you can get around this by doing a pilot-to-pilot trade. So, like, Rob, if you had a trip that you want to get rid of, and I had a trip I want to get rid of, and we talked to each other and go, hey, you want to trade? And we both said yes. Then we could fill out a form and we would be granted. So there are workarounds on this. However,
but they're all contractual and legal according through the agreements.
That's not easy to do because, what are the odds, right? So we have this software that the company has. They call it TTS, TTOT. And so you go in there and you can manually do this. Now you can pick up open time, which fine, but no one's really doing that right now because we're under contract negotiations and we want the company to staff accordingly and pay us accordingly and all this stuff. So why lean forward to help them out? Now, what had happened, this glitch that they're calling it, according to this article, was in the scheduling platform that allowed American airline pilots to drop thousands of July assignments overnight on Saturday. Their union said the headache from the airline as it tries to minimize flight disruptions during a booming travel season. American said it didn't expect the problem to affect its operation, including during the busy July 4th holiday weekend. The union and the airline are now discussing additional pay for pilots who dropped trips in the airline, and then they were reinstated without their knowledge. And this is according to the Allied Pilots Association. So what happened was this. The union said, hey, you made everything redder, which means you're going to have pilots that say, hey, well, I can't make that. I have a prior commitment. I have a volleyball tournament to go to. So I'm probably just going to end up calling in sick. And the union said this to the company, and the company went, oh, yeah, maybe we should allow people to trade because we have people, we're going to pick up trips anyway. People want money. They want to pick up a trip, right? Especially if it's premium pay. Well, someone hit some button. Okay, this is not, in my opinion, okay, it's not a computer glitch. Somebody hit some button and turned all the trips green. Okay, and all it takes is for it to turn green for a second. And now the computer program goes, oh, Rob, you put in a drop request in the computer, which it was denied because that your trip was redder. You can't drop a red trip. But now it turned green. So, I'll go ahead and grant that, the computer said, right? Because that's the software. So it
times 15,000
pilots that happen to have drop requests into the computer software. When they found out, holy moly, this is 12,000 flights are now having been dropped. They quickly reinstated about 80% of those. They gave them back to people. And unfortunately, some people that legally dropped their trips even before the glitch happened, they had their trips reinstated as well.
So that's kind of what I was going to try to bring up too, so our listeners kind of understand the scenario is that, this whole thing, this whole scheduling and trading and everything, we have to operate with boundaries and with some rules in place because there needs to be a precedent set for the way we schedule our trips and everything like that individually. So there's some agreed upon practices that we use. One of them is like trip trade, TTOT, and a premium, picking up premium and trading through pilots, that we have to do it a certain way through the company. One of those ways is the way we also drop our trips, saying, I don't want to fly this one. If there's staffing levels permit, I'd like to drop this into open time and let somebody else fly it. Okay, anybody can just willingly pick it up, and then I will be free that weekend. I choose to be free. I could also choose to fly something else if I want to, but that's my choice. But that's within the laws and bylaws of our contract and trip trading system, and all that kind of stuff. So when this glitch occurred, okay, we're calling it a glitch or a mistake or something like that, but it happened legally. So all those trips, like we were just talking about, 12,000 dropped into open time. So now they have legally dropped into open time. And what the company is doing now that's illegal is replacing those trips back into pilot schedules that they have legally dropped. Right. So the problem is that's created now is that the pilot is not obligated to fly those trips because they legally dropped them and they were illegally placed back into their schedules.
Right.
And there has been no legal notification for them that has been replaced back into the schedule and they have to fly them.
Right.
So that's where we're kind of sitting now in that
That cloudy
no
area.
man's land and that cloudy gray other. And the other thing you mentioned is the company is offering premium for these trips, and some of them are pretty remarkable. 200 to 300% premium.
Yeah.
To fly your trip, as opposed to the agreed upon 150%.
Right.
So there goes another problem. I would love to make more money. I got a bank account that could certainly use a lot more money. However, the agreed upon premium is 150%.
Yeah.
So the company is now trying to throw an extra 200 or 300% at you to come fly these trips. I would love to do it, but it's not contractual. So it's, in my opinion, it's not. I wouldn't be a good union member if I would drop the trip illegally. I drop the trip legally and then turn around and then try to, get that trip reinstated back into my schedule illegally, and then illegally fly that for 200 or 300%. Right. I like the money, but I'm not going to do it.
So now here's the caveat to it all. We talk about what's legal and not legal. Now we're talking, there's two different things here. There's FAR legalities in terms of rest, in terms of flight time, duty time issues. And then there's contract legality. Now, contract legality means, hey, if I signed a contract as a condition of my employment and I'm represented by my pilots association of whatever it is for whatever airline, then I should follow my contract. Meaning, if I'm supposed to have 10 hours of rest or 13 hours of rest after a reserve assignment, whatever, in base, then that's what I should have. And when the company calls and says, well, we have a trip for you, but wait a minute, that's only 12 hours of rest, and contractually it's 13, even though FAA, legally it's 10, but contractually it's 13, according to this scenario. So I should follow the contract, okay? Because it number one, it's, if I start bending the rules and looking the other way because I want the money, then
some people will say, well, if it's a FAR that it's 10 hours, and why is your company contractually 13 hours? Well, the FAR is a baseline that all operators need to work under.
The minimum, yeah.
The minimum, right. And what a lot of people don't understand, that the 13 hours for our particular company and our union is because of the type of flying that we do. We have to have the 13 hours because of the long durations of maybe the flights, the week, the legs, the base, or the sequences, and exactly.
So a lot of people don't live in base, so now they have to commute, and so if you have 10 hours between trips and you have to commute home to change and repack and stuff, 10 hours isn't going to cut it. So the contract allows, in this particular scenario, 13 hours. Now, the minute you start accepting a trip that's 12 hours, now you're creating a precedence. You're, number one, you're breaking the contract. Okay. And if you break one rule, you might as well break all the rules. And so you set a precedence. In our situation that we're talking about here, where the company, because of a glitch, dropped legally, contractually, was given everyone these trips that they had in the system that they wanted to drop, so that most people drop. So to be honest with you, they drop so that they can pick up premium, which is another issue entirely in terms of ethical and moral standing. Now, I'm not saying it's bad one way or another, because we all picked up premium. It's a good way to make 150% pay for like one trip a month, or some people play the game. But to do it the whole month,
you would agree legally,
right? As long as you're doing it legally and contractually, there's no problem with it. Now the company did this, and then they go, "Oops, we made a mistake. It was a computer glitch. Everybody that was granted a drop trip during that midnight run, okay, it's back on your schedule. Sorry, my bad. Psych." Right? Okay, now the union sent out an email that morning at 6 a.m. saying, listen, if you were affected by this, we say enjoy your time off. Stay home. You were legally given time off. You were illegally given it back to you. Now, if you were asleep in the middle of the night, you don't check your emails, you may not have even realized that this has happened to you. So there's another issue there, okay? Unless you have these third-party apps, or the union has a great app that tells you every time your schedule changes. So you would have some kind of way to track it. Now, according to the article, that they went on with a quote from the union president, Captain Ed Seischer, I think his name is. He's a brand new union president. He was just elected. Brand new, like first week ago. Yeah, first week. Yeah. He started his term on Friday. There you go. He told Americans roughly 15,000 pilots Saturday night that American Airlines CEO Robert Isom said that he is committed to paying an inconvenience premium. That's what you were talking about, a 200% premium to aviators whose trips American put back on their schedules after the glitch. To Robert Isom's credit, this is a quote, he called me 4 times today to commit to mitigating the damage from this debacle. Seischer wrote late Saturday. We started it at 200% override pay, although the details of this pay are still in the subject of negotiations, and there's no guarantee on the details or the amounts. So this has to be put in writing contractually. A TA or a tentative agreement must be released, and then everyone will get the 200% premium pay or whatever they end up agreeing upon.
Well, they have to vote. Yeah,
they have to vote. The Master Executive Council has to vote for the union. And whatever they settle on, then the pilots will either be paid that or retroactively paid that as a premium because of the inconvenience that the companies put on them. Now, whether or not you as a pilot choose to fly after this whole thing or stay home is up to you. And the union has made it perfectly clear that if you choose to fly, the union's not going to look at it as a bad thing. And if you choose to stay home, they're not going to look at it as a bad thing, because both scenarios, I mean, at the end of the day, we have a company to run, right? And we have a company to be a part of. We're very much a part of that, because without us, the airplanes don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So with all this fiasco, there's a lot going on. It's a terrible glitch. We mentioned the glitch that happened in 2017, the Christmas glitch?
Yeah, the green Christmas.
Same thing happened. At that time, there were, I believe it was a period where everybody that did the same thing. Everyone that wanted vacation or time off was granted
time off over the holiday
weekend, and then they gave 150% pay for anyone that would pick up that flying again, because they didn't say it was a glitch. It was a mistake. Someone I'm sure got fired over that.
They did.
Someone pushed the red button. Don't push the button. And what happened was they said, well, it's an open time.
Conveniently resigned.
Yeah, right. And they said, well, if you pick it up, we'll give you 150% pay. And pilots are like, well, I just dropped this trip. Well, I guess I could go pick up my trip again and get 150%. Yeah. But see, that was more contractual because it was a voluntary thing. And yes, a lot of flights were canceled and delayed, and they had a hard time that holiday weekend. And it was kind of embarrassing for the company as well. And this was an effort to kind of minimize the embarrassment, minimize the effects of oops.
Yeah. So we're back to where we were in 2017, and unfortunately, the current atmosphere between the union pilot and its pilots and the company are not in a good spot. I think I think the current CEO, Robert Isom, I think his intent was good, but I don't think he fully, all the things that he asked for are something that needs to be negotiated out in our actual contract, not as a Band-Aid to the situation, because the situation happened under normal operating circumstances, and there needs to be contingencies set in place for situations like this. It's not our fault that somebody screwed up in the scheduling department, or somebody screwed up in the planning department and they, scheduled all these flights with not enough staffing. There's nothing we can do about that. We have a job to do, but we also have a life to live, so I have plenty of things that I need to be doing. I got 2 teenage daughters going to all these volleyball tournaments and getting ready to do college. That's why I work, so I can earn enough money for them to do that. But I also need to be here for them during their special time. So I need to be able to move my schedule around as required. And if I can't do that, I'm going to go through the other processes, going through the chief pilot office to get time off and stuff like that. And then I use my sick time when I'm sick. So I am able to make my schedule work the way I need to make it work for myself. And there's other pilots have different motives and different ways they operate. And I don't agree with them telling me how I should fly my schedule.
Right.
Because
not you.
I have to do it. They're not me, and they don't know the parameters that I need to operate under. So, it's one of those very sensitive things right now. And I just kind of hope that, we get through this, and which we will. But, and something on paper comes out between company and the management that addresses this thing and all the many other scheduling challenges that we've had in the past, which is what's really currently hurting us right now is the way they schedule us. So
it
schedule
seems
us
like
and
it's
utilize
panic
us,
scheduling and panic flying and panic staffing and panic everything. And it all just seems like very reactive, and that we're sick and tired of it, because we as pilots, it's not like you mentioned, it's not like we have a 9-to-5 job. And at 5 p.m., we're home, we're going to have dinner. Maybe we missed the recital, but we can at least be home for dinner and talk about, hey, how was your recital today, honey? And our families get to see our faces. We're gone for 3, 4, 5 days at a time where we're gone. And it's not like we're sitting at some hotel, we can FaceTime. It's like, no, we're flying airplanes for I just did finish this 4-day trip. Too. Actually turned into it's actually a 5-day trip because it was a red eye on the tail end of it. But I mean, that's doing red eyes and being exhausted on the layover, and you're like, oh well, you're in paradise. But I'm sleeping. I always reemphasize that with my wife and my kids when they travel. For instance, they just traveled back from Boston the other day, and they got, it wasn't the first departure. I think it was like the 8 a.m. departure, but nonetheless, they were forced to get up, 5 a.m. East Coast time, which is really 4 a.m. their time over here. And then go to the airport, travel, come here. And then by the time they got to the house, it was like 2 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And they were exhausted. I mean, they were just like, oh my God, I need to, go. And I said, now that is one of the flights that I would do that day. I would do 3 of those. I said, so imagine my energy level when I get to the hotel or when I come home at the end of the trip. That is my fatigue level. I am exhausted. I'm hungry. I'm tired. My brain is just dead. No power tools are allowed. Right. Well said. Yeah.
Right. Or long distance drives. I am done. I'm not going to cook. I'm going to pick up food or have something delivered.
Yeah.
And that's just the mindset that I'm in. And sometimes I'm better than others. Some days, I'm sure you agree, but, anyways, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but basically, it's exhausting. The job is exhausting. It's not, yes, it is fun. Can be glamorous at times, and we do get paid very well for what we do. But we do have to work, and it's tough. It really is.
It's not all rainbows and unicorns, man.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. We try to explain our schedules, our lifestyles, our all this stuff, our quality of life to friends and family all the time. And I can see them, nodding their head going, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Oh, but they really, they don't understand. And the closest anyone can come to understanding is family, like what your wife, just came back from Boston, and they can understand that. And it's important to kind of point that out in a kind way, to say, hey, that I just want you to stop and think about how you feel right now. And imagine doing that for 4 days, like you said, 4 days in a row, just one aspect of the job. And then I come home, and you got to have your time. Your family has to understand this, because those that don't, it creates major problems. And then that's part of the problem of aviation careers is family.
Now, let's follow this up, though. If you're listening, you're a new listener or listening and you're thinking about coming into the industry, don't let this, scare you away from it. It's still a great job.
It's manageable.
I had a young, it's manageable, right? You just have to have your manage your expectations when you come in. There was a young man that was at the volleyball tournament and was the son of was the brother of one of the players on my daughter's team. He was I think he was 15, and he found out that I was a pilot, so he came up to me and was like, "Hey, I want to be a pilot too." And I sat down with him for hours, and I just chatted him up about, you know, the process of becoming a pilot and things you have to do, and then the lifestyle and stuff like that. And, you know, you could just see his eyes lighting up big. And I'm like, man, you're going to be the perfect pilot one day. You know, you just keep plugging away at it. But, you know, I didn't want to scare him with, you know, I kind of, you know, teased him with some of the downsides of the industry, because you have to. You can't just sugarcoat everything. Because I'd hate for him to come back and, you know, 10 years saying, man, I don't know why
you lied to me.
You lied your ass off to me. I was like, no.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's people still out there that want to do this, and
There's hope.
And I do it. It's a great job, man. It's a fun job. Hopefully we can make it better, you know, and that's kind of our goal as you know, aviators moving on, is to make it a better place for, you know, the aviators that are coming in behind us. So
so
you know,
listener out there, if you're listening and picking up what we're putting down here, we're trying to explain all the realities of what a professional aviator can expect in today's marketplace. And that is the mission of this podcast. Now, we appreciate you listening. We love talking about this stuff. We love it when we have featured guests on and they can give us highlights on their journey. Like we recently had Captain Keith on, giving us his highlights and everything he's got going on. He's just amazing character, and not to mention all the others that we had over the last 113 shows. You know, it's absolutely a pleasure to sit here and be able to have these conversations, both with you and the others, and with all of the listeners out there. You know, just the feedback has been tremendous, such positivity, and I feel so grateful to be able to do that with you. We have just a few more topics to discuss. Are you okay with the time?
Yes, let's do it.
Well, I think it was about 6 months ago where we first were talking about this next story. Captain C.B. Sully Sullenberger, or Chelsea Sullenberger, was the captain that piloted the Miracle flight over the Hudson. And he was commissioned to, I think it would be the right word, to be the ICAO ambassador for the United States. And that was only 6 months ago. But I came across an article from Flying Magazine indicating he has stepped down from his position. From Flying Magazine, Julie Boatman wrote a story on June 24th entitled "Sully Steps Down from ICAO Role." Retired U.S. airline captain C.B. Sully Sullenberger held the ambassador position for only 6 months. In an unexpected development on the global aerospace stage, Captain Sullenberger has stepped down from his position as the ICAO ambassador, or the International Civil Aviation Organization. He only served for about 6 months. The retired U.S. Airways captain announced on Thursday that he would depart from the organization on July 1st. He'd been confirmed to the post in December of 2021 in Montreal. In a statement to Reuters, Sullenberger indicated that he was relinquishing his role and that it was not an easy decision, but did not offer a reason for his departure after just 6 months. And you, of course, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that Sully Sullenberger was the captain that landed the U.S. Airways Flight 1549, an Airbus A320, on January 15th, 2009, on the Hudson River in New York after departing from LaGuardia, and hit a flock of birds that took both engines out of commission. He was also very much outspoken on his commentary on topics from the lure of an airline career to the fate of the Boeing 737 MAX. We'll keep an eye on this story and see if we get any kind of reasoning from Sully on why he decided to step down. Yeah, and just one more topic that we wanted to talk about, actually a couple more before we wrap up the show today. This one, I think I found it and I shared it with the Aviation Business Information Board on Facebook, Kyle's page. And it affected me because at the time I was flying or getting ready to fly when I found this article and I read it kind of towards that cruise. We had some time I was reading this article. Defects found in the internal components of 13 CFM LEAP 1A engines. Now, not 13 total, 13 types. of the CFM Leap 1 engines. This is an article from Aerotime, aerotime.aero. This is an article that came out on the 1st of July, 2022, from Gabriele Petruskati. Petrauskati. Yeah, that's a tongue twister. Defects found the components of 13 CFM Leap 1A engines. This was information released from the FAA. The Federal Aviation Administration has issued a new notice of proposing rulemaking, or an NPRM. We need more acronyms. After the U.S. regulator identified defects in the internal components of 13 CFM International Leap 1A turbofan engines. According to the FAA, notice of proposed rulemaking, which was issued on June 30th of 2022, indicates that certain engine spools and discs were found to be in an unsafe condition. That's not something you want to hear if you're an aircraft manufacturer or an airline flying around these engines. The issue...
Pilot.
Yeah, right. The issue was detected in 13 of the CFM Leap 1A high bypass turbofan engines, the Leap 1A23, the 24, the 24E1, the A126, the A126CJ, the 1A26E1, as well as a bunch of others. The one that really caught my eye was the one that is in our Airbus A321 Neos. Or I believe it's the 1A35A. The regulator explained that these defects could result in the release of uncontained debris, damage the engine, and damage the aircraft if not addressed. The issue was detected during enhanced inspections performed by the engine manufacturer CFM International, the FAA noted in the NPRM. The FAA was notified by the manufacturer of the detection of melt-related freckles in the billet, which may reduce the life of certain compressor rotor stages 6 through 10 spools. The HPT, or high-pressure turbine rotor interstage seals, the HPT rotor stage 2 discs, the low-pressure turbine stage 1 disc, the LPT stage 2 disc, the LPT stage 3 disc, and 4 disc. The FAA explained that in order to incorporate reduced life limits for these parts, the proposed directive would require revising the airworthiness limitations section of the applicable Leap 1A engines shop manual, alongside the operator's existing approved continuous airworthiness maintenance program, or the CAMP. This proposed AD would require the removal of certain low-pressure turbine stage 4 discs identified by a serial number prior to their new life limits, the FAA wrote. This, in total, will affect 256 engines installed on U.S. registered narrow-body aircraft.
Yeah, so I gather what it sounds like is they're going to have, each engine has a calendared inspection and replacement time frame. So let's say in 2 years you have to replace the low pressure turbine blades, whatever stage that they talked about, 4, 5, and 6, because of wear and play, and that's, you have to do it every 2 years. Well, it sounds like they're gonna have to do it every earlier than 2 years. So just picking an arbitrary time, let's say a year. So yeah, that's a lot of engines and a lot of maintenance and a lot of, especially at a time where we need airplanes.
We need these airplanes flying, and now you have an unscheduled early inspection of an aircraft where they have to take apart the entire engine. We're talking of millions of dollars worth of maintenance per engine.
What they'll probably do is I know they have inventory of engines, and it's not like they have a whole bunch of them sitting around. I mean, these things are millions of dollars a piece, but they, just to keep the airline operating, this is part of the moving pieces that we talked about in operating an airline. You do have spare engines laying around. I shouldn't just say laying around. They're around in strategical places. But anyway, I would imagine that if those engines fall into that serial number, they would actually go ahead and get those engines ready.
Right.
And then when the airplane comes in for its service, swap the engines out, take the bad ones out, put the new ones in, get those other ones ready, and kind of do like the old rob Peter to pay Paul kind of thing.
Yeah.
and keep the airplanes flying as they come in for their mechanical checks and chains. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
but it affects not only the Neo, but also the Max fleet. The Max uses the LEAP engines too. So that's outside of our Airbus world, it also affects that world too. So it's a pretty big deal. But it's good that they find stuff like this, because this is how you keep the aviation safe. There's people that are working behind the scenes, and they keep us in the air and keep us from having an accident because of stuff like this. So that's good on them.
Yeah.
Glad they're there.
Yeah, and it's great that a manufacturer would release this intel to the FAA and say, "Hey, we found an issue." That really says wonders about the reputation of CFM and that whole manufacturing process.
Yep. Yeah. That's right.
Well, in our last story, I came across this one online, and at first I thought, what the heck is this? Is this real? Is this from a while ago? Yeah, it's real. Just as a reminder that security is always an issue with us as airline pilots. We always want to consider security. Now, obviously, there's security sensitive information that we are privy to that, under the penalty of law, federal law, we cannot discuss publicly, not even with our family, a lot of our security protocols. But security should always be on our mind, not just as pilots, but as passengers, as employees, as even enthusiasts. You see something, they always say something. I say, you see something, do something. Just make a phone call, even if it's, do something, get in the way, because it's absolutely crucial that we always consider safety and security. And luckily, all the incidences that we were dealing with during the pandemic have slowed down significantly. Go figure. Don't require people to wear a mask. People calm the hell down. But there's footage that went viral of an air marshal that was pulling a gun on passengers while standing in front of the cockpit, guarding the cockpit door. It did not happen here in the U.S., and it did happen over a month ago. But the incident was tweeted and recently went viral. So I just wanted to show a little bit to you. I know we can kind of just hear what's going on. But this is what happened when a security guard that was protecting the airplane cockpit with a gun. The incident allegedly took place several months back, but the footage is now going viral on a Jordanian security officer pulling a gun on passengers in the galley in first class in order to keep them away from the jet's cockpit. In the video, you can see that the cockpit door opened and closed, and then the passengers repeatedly try to come up to the cockpit to enter it, while the security officer keeps passengers away with his gun. And now, we're going to talk a little bit more about this flight and what was really going on. It was actually a chartered flight, but I think it's more of a cultural thing that led up to this, but definitely a high-stress environment. And let me share this with all of you. What we're seeing is a security guard is guarding the cockpit from the first-class galley. The pilot looks like just went into the cockpit. The door's shut behind him. The door is now secured, but the guard has his firearm pointed at the passengers that are visibly upset. His other free hand, his stop motion saying, get back, get back. And it's a very, very traumatic scene here.
Don't worry, Mohammed. Relax.
Now, culturally, this loud nature of what was going on here is not unusual. And in an article from 1 Mile at a Time, they kind of dive into what actually they feel was happening here. This is an article from Ben Schlepping from June 17th. And in it, he says, the incident happened on Jordanian Aviation, which is a private charter airline based in Amman. The airline operates worldwide charter services. The video was filmed several months back, and this happened on a charter flight from Saudi Arabia to Nigeria. This was allegedly an Umrah flight, a UMRAH, or Umrah flight, which was a pilgrimage for religious passengers. According to reports, the flight had to divert to a different airport in Nigeria, and the airline tried to offload passengers there. The travelers weren't happy with this diversion point and the carrier's inability to get them to their final destination. Once the plane was on the ground, passengers wanted to speak to the captain. However, Jordanian law prohibits passengers from entering the cockpit, and it's standard for Jordanian Airlines to have a security officer on board. So when the passengers tried to enter the cockpit, the security officer tried to keep them away with his gun. Looking at Jordanian's aviation's fleet, plus the layout of the galley on this airplane, it is assumed that the plane in question was a 34-year-old Boeing 767-200ER with registration code Juliet Yankee Juliet Alpha Lima, which has quite a history. If you want to Google something, Google that. The big question is...
JAL.
That's it,
Juliet
JAL.
Alpha Lima.
So the big question here is why passengers tried to enter the cockpit. According to some reports, the flight was supposed to operate to Kano, Nigeria, or KAN, but diverted to Yola, Nigeria, YOL, and passengers were told to disembark. For what it's worth, the two airports are 330 miles apart. There are conflicting stories as to why the diversion happened, though. The only other comment from the airline is that there is a threat to prosecute anyone who tries to harm the company's reputation by fabricating rumors related to this incident. Ooh. So the bottom line is there's a video. It went viral. The backstory of what happened is really not truthfully known, and one can only speculate. But regardless of the age of these reinforced cockpit doors, you'd think that the cockpit wouldn't have to be protected by someone pointing a gun at people, or do you? So, was the security officer justified to, pull out his weapon and aim it at passengers to tell them to get back? You have a bunch of these Nigerians, and there's religious pilgrimage, which should be a relatively peaceful event, that are upset because, well, they landed 330 miles away from their original destination, and the airline tried to say, okay, well, you're close enough. You're close enough. Don't worry about it. Well, how am I supposed to get to this place I'm supposed to be? Well, you're close enough. You figure it out. This is probably what happened. And of course, they were unhappy, wanted to talk to the captain, which even happens here in the U.S., right? People tried to talk to the captain. They're on the ground. It's not like they're en route, but it was the jet bridge door attached. We don't know if the jet bridge was attached to the door and the door was open. We don't know that. So there's a lot going on here and a lot to unravel. Just the video that you and I got to see, it's pretty alarming.
Yeah, they look pretty agitated.
Yeah.
They look pretty agitated. It's hard to know, the context of the whole story and what led up to it. Obviously, we know where they ended up. But, who knows what was there other contributors that got them all fired up that way,
Right.
And it's definitely a tense situation, it seems like.
Yeah. What would you do?
I know my family is Puerto Rican. I've seen them get in the, get a little excited like that on sporting events and stuff like that. So,
I want to talk to the captain.
It could be cultural, it could be hereditary, but man, you hate to see that happen, and like I said, it's hard to talk about that whole thing when you don't really know everything about it. You only have that little, 45-second a minute clip.
Yeah.
And it's obviously right in the heat of things, so you don't know how it all began. But I just hope we'll never have that scenario here in the United States, because that would definitely become news, headline news.
Yeah, that's major, and especially now in this day and age with everyone with their recording studio in their pocket. Yeah, it would make news quick. But last thing I wanted to do was share some audio from a meetup that I had with Alex and one of his training partners that I got to meet. We went to dinner the night that I was there in Dallas for my recurrent training. Alex said, "Yeah, man, I'm available in the evening too. Let's get together." So, we got together and had a pretty good meal there at one of my favorite places, El Phoenix, I believe it's called.
Yeah. Nice.
And here's the audio from that. Here we are at El Phoenix in Irving, Texas, at a meetup, kind of El Promptu meetup, I would say. Actually, down here for some recurrent training at the Legacy Airlines Training Center this week. Today was my initial recurrent ground school. This is the only ground school day of recurrent. It's 1 day of recurrent ground school and 3 simulator events. And one of our friends of the show and host, Alex D, said, hey, I'm going to be flying in on the day you have ground school. Let's meet up. So here we are at El Phoenix in Texas, one of my favorite Mexican restaurants. I've been coming here since my days at Sandpiper. Occasionally, we'd get together after class with, a dozen or so pilots, and we'd, hobble over here from the hotel, and we'd have some just fantastic meals. And I think today was absolutely no different. Alex, it's been really cool to follow your journey so far on the show, and thank you for having the idea of meeting up with me.
Yeah, Tony, it's great to be over here. Great to be out back in Dallas area. I got to spend some time at home with the family while I'm on break in between my ground lessons and in between the sims. So we're at a point now where I have a day break tomorrow, and I hit sim lesson 1 hard on Saturday, running at 6 o'clock in the evening is my sim time. So should be fun, should be a good time to be able to start actually putting all that ground knowledge into some good practice. This is your first sim? First sim in the 175. So.
And what's your slot time?
6 o'clock in the evening.
So you're going to go till late?
10? Yeah. It's perfect though, because I'm more of a night owl than the early morning rise. So I figure 6 o'clock gives enough time in the day to actually get stuff done and then roll right into a sim lesson. So.
And when you text me, you're like, hey, I'm flying in, and I'm going to go to the curb, and I'm going to hop on the van, and we'll meet up. And I was like, oh, yeah, good luck, because the hotel van, yesterday, I waited almost 45 minutes from when we were on the curb ready to go to the hotel to when they finally picked me up. And I told you, yeah, give it an hour. It's going to be a while. And you did not make it to the hotel, did you?
No. So I was waiting for the hotel van, and I decided to text my buddy Mike, and I was like, hey, so what's going on? I know Mike wanted to meet up with us for dinner and all that. And I was like, hey, so what's going on? He's like, you know what? Don't wait for the van. Hop on the employee shuttle bus, go down to the south parking lot, and I'll meet you down there, and we can head down and pick Tony up. So I haven't even been to the hotel to check in yet, and I'm sitting here now with Mike and you at El Phoenix.
And speaking of, you told me that Mike wants to get together with us, and today I made a new friend. Mike, welcome to the Squawk Ident podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Tony. I've been listening to you and Alex have a good time, and enjoy kind of learning what's going on with you and where you're taking the program and all of that, and thought, hey, let's check it out and meet this guy. And so it's been enjoyable.
Thank you. And, the first time that Alex mentioned you to me, he was sending me photos from your place. And I was like, where are you? Are you at a museum? Where are you? He's like, I'm at my buddy's house. I'm like, does he own an airport? What's going on? And your place is very impressive. How did you come across to have such a really nice airport home here in Texas?
Actually, Texas has a lot of airport communities in it. And I've lived at a different one down in the Austin area starting in 2000, but had been basing an airplane at one up near Justin, Texas, near Fort Worth Alliance. And made some friends up there, and one came on the market, and I jumped on it. I was IT at the time, and was fortunate to be able to be at the right place at the right time and have the money to do it. And so I picked it up, and if you have a big hangar, you have to fill it with projects. And well, Alex got to see my multiple projects, so there's a lot going on in that hangar. You'll have to come out and hang out sometime.
that would be great. And we've had some other aircraft builders on the show before, working on their projects, and I just actually texted John Gruber today because I've been following his Lancer Legacy build, and it comes and goes with his schedule, but the fact that he's been making such strides in his build, we hope to have him on the show again. What is the project that you're working on the most right now?
Other than training on the 175 at Sandpiper with Alex, that's been consuming most of my time lately. What I really want to get back to is the Yak 52. I picked up Yak 52 last August because I've always had a passion for warbirds. My mother actually got me addicted to them at probably 6 or 7 years old, going to air shows, and finally picked one of those up last year. Enjoyed the heck out of it. It's just due for condition inspection and some upgrades and things like that. It's just a matter of time. So when you're starting something new, like your first jet training and your first regional job, that's time consuming. So, but I do look forward to getting back on to getting the Yak going and have you guys out and go take you for a ride.
That's great. And do you have the traditional instrumentation in the Yak, or have you given it some upgrades?
It is mostly original, so if you don't read Russian, that's okay, because there's green and yellow and red marks on the on the instrumentation. It is a little different, though, because the vertical speed indicator is in meters per second, so that's a little different. But flying an airplane's flying an airplane, and you get the chance to fly one, and you move the stick, and you see what moves, and it all makes sense. It's really not hard. The altimeter's been changed, but airspeed is in kilometers an hour and things like that. You'd have no problem adjusting to it.
Yeah, I was able, when I was doing my training in Phoenix many years ago, a few decades ago, actually. We had a couple Yaks at the airport where I had my flight school there, or at least where I was teaching, and I was told that the artificial horizon is blue below and brown above. Is that how yours is too?
It is, and honestly, I don't even turn it on. It's on its own inverter. It's a big power-hungry instrument. I don't even turn it on because I only use it during the day in VFR conditions and just look outside. But yep, it would really mess you up if you were in the clouds, and it's an instrument trainer. That's one of the things they used it for. And you would definitely have to learn that specific way of doing it. Yes, Alex, because you were inverted.
Waiting for that one. So, and I was told that the reasoning that the Russians designed the Yak with this, inverted with the blue below the horizon line and the brown above was because the ice is white, and a lot of the areas up in the tundra area of the world is with white snow on the ground, and they fly at night, and so it's dark above. Is that really the reason?
That is a bit of trivia that I don't know the answer to, but it would be fascinating to look that up to confirm. So I don't know.
Honestly, that wouldn't surprise me if that were the true reason, because surprisingly, we don't give the Russians enough credit. They built some pretty good airplanes back in the day. So Yaks and then all the way through the MiG series, they know how to build an airplane too.
They don't waste any energy on cosmetics or attractiveness. It's all utilitarian. So.
That is right. When Yuri was a cosmonaut in the space station, he did not use $1 million pen and write in space. He used pencil because he write just fine.
Right. I love the story that the American NASA scientists spent millions and millions of dollars to spend all this money of designing this pen that'll write in 0G and upside down and left and right to left, and the Russians are like, we use pencil. It's okay.
That's right. Well, gentlemen, thank you. It's been nice to get together here tonight and have a good meal. El Phoenix, it's just a wonderful place to have a good meal. We'll put links in the show notes. And gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to meet you, Tony. Look forward to hanging out again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to take you up on that Yak project, maybe in about a year when you're off probation.
Yeah, exactly. When I don't get junior manned all the time.
Exactly. Well, when you're making $1,000 an hour, over at that Sandpiper. Well, folks, back to you in the studio. Aviator Tony, take it away.
That's awesome, man. That was a good sound clip.
Yeah, no, we had a good time. I really enjoyed meeting Mike. And Alex had sent me pictures or video from his place and all the airplanes in the hangar and everything. It's just amazing. A total aviation nerd's dream. An av geek would look at that and go, "Oh, goals."
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah.
Well, Rob, thank you so much for spending this time with me every chance we get. Thank you so much to Rob, to Alex as well for joining us today, and to Kyle and Roger who couldn't make it today. Well, you guys just missed out. What can I tell you? But thank you, gentlemen, as well. And do you enjoy listening to our podcast during this flight? I hope so. Then pay it forward and share this podcast with a friend or someone who you might think would enjoy it. Make sure to subscribe and follow the Squawk Ident podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. We also love receiving listener feedback. You can send us an email or even an audio clip right from our website, and that's found at www.aviatortony.com. That's Alpha Victor, the number 8, Romeo Tango Oscar November Yankee.com. You can help produce the show by sending us a few bucks, and you can do that right there from the homepage via many different ways, including PayPal. Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram users, you can also find us under the Squawk Ident podcast. And one final thank you to all of you for taking the time to listen to these grateful aviators. Keep the dirty side down out there, be safe, and take care of each other. Bye, everyone.
See ya. Later.
what kind of flying?